Thanks. I feel like I'm home,
I feel
actually.
like, yeah, totally. Babe, of course we have to have you here. You are our eternal muse and the epitome of luxury.
Thank you. No, I come to the studio and I'm so comfortable here. I feel like we've done so many shoots and videos and
we have.
interviews. We've done a lot. Like this, I think if these walls could talk, they would have a lot of stories.
Oh, yes, there would. Babe, you know, when we started doing this journey of the Made podcast, it was kind of on a whim, and it's starting to get kind of deep. I think the more we have these conversations, the more we're starting to realize how intricate the topic is. We all look at someone like yourself, and you have been able to manifest an incredible brand around your name, Rosemin.
Yeah.
A name that you just told me that you didn't even like when you were growing up. That's
I hate
crazy.
It. Yeah.
Now, that on the outset, of course, it seems so natural when we watch you do it. It's so legit. There's so much integrity in everything that you do. The legitimacy of what you do. Your background, your experience, we're going to talk about everything. How you came through these levels and layers of the industry. But it's more than that. Because it's more than actually your experience. It's your ability to connect and collaborate and advise and bring knowledge and thought leadership together to manifest beautiful things. You are literally the art of making it happen. Like it should be just Rosemin.
It's the Rosemin Show, only for this episode. Don't worry, just for this episode.
So I think we just need to go back to the beginning a little bit when it's you, because honestly, you're such an incredible friend to me and muse of ours at Capital D. And I think that people kind of know fragments about you and they know you as a personality, but I don't know that they know your background. Like, let's go back to where it started in the luxury industry. Just a quick one.
Yeah.
Give us a quick rundown.
To be honest, when I look back at my work values, it really comes back, and embarrassingly, I say this because when I was 40 in 2020, I was invited to speak at the UK Parliament on Women's Day.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, everybody? The UK Parliament.
Yeah, they invited me to speak, and I've spoken a lot, but I've never been so nervous to speak in front of the Parliament, because you have to submit your speech in advance. There's all these rules, like 5 minutes. They gave me a topic, and I literally had to sit there, and I sat with my brother, and I reflected on my whole life, because they were like, "How did you get to where you are?" And there was a few things that I learned in that reflection process. Was that my parents are immigrants. They were born in East Africa. They had to fled because of Idi Amin. My dad was studying and working and building his business in the UK. My sister was already born in Africa, so she was 3 when this happened. They collectively as a family, because my dad has a big family, they decided to make Canada their home, because it only made sense that as brothers, like my dad and my uncles, would at least come together to start building a business.
Yeah.
And then they would kind of go out on their own. And that was their strategy. Being in Canada with literally a suitcase each and starting your life all over again. And my mom was a teacher. My sister was 3.
And how old were you?
I wasn't born yet.
Oh my God.
So this happened in 72.
Oh my God.
But, watching my parents work hard. There was no such thing as 9 to 5. They were trying to give us the best life they could.
Yeah.
My mom was trying to support my dad building this business. And when I see those kind of values, that they did everything they could to make sure we were living in the best area, to have access to the best schools, working around the clock. Sometimes I would get so angry that my dad would come home at 11 o'clock, or at night or on the weekends. Selfishly as a kid, I'd be like, my brother and I would be partying, and my dad's like, "We're having family breakfast at 10 a.m. And, you had to be down dressed, like not in your pajamas, like dressed downstairs. And I'd be like, "What?" And then, when you're a kid partying, like you don't want to wake up at like 9:30, 10 to have family breakfast, But what I realized was, like, to me, that was so important for my dad, because he's like, "This is my only day off that I get to hear about your week and your stories and talk about, what our plans are as a family." And so those are only things you really appreciate as you get older.
Yeah.
But to see my parents really are true entrepreneurs, starting from scratch, building a life for 3, I have 2 other siblings, so there's 3 of us. And I think that's always the first thing, that I have such gratitude for them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the first importance. The second part of it is that seeing my parents work, I wanted to work as well. So I knew I loved fashion. I loved creativity. Even growing up as a kid, my parents would buy me dolls. The first thing I would do is go to this store called Fabricland and buy fabric to make clothes on my Barbie dolls, So I think I always had that. Having an older sister who's 11 years older than me, I wasn't interested in fairy tale books. I saw her have posters of W magazine and Vogue, and I was so attracted to that photography, that fashion photography, that I think my eye was very trained from a very, very young age.
It's inherent in you, my love.
No, and so I look back
it's from the gods.
And when I look back at kind of the fights my sister and I had, I would go to her perfume cabinet, and we kind of all loved beauty in our house, and I would mix perfumes and she would scream at me, the Estee Lauder perfume with something else, and I would kind of make this concoction.
Oh my God, you were layering back.
I was layering back.
It was a thing, babe.
Exactly. So I look back, and I've always kind of come back to beauty and fashion, and so going to London and going to fashion school was such an incredible opportunity. Did I ever think I would stay in Europe? My parents will say no. I thought I would totally end up in New York, because I think when you grow up in Toronto, New York is an hour flight. Yes. It's literally home. You still have that city life buzz, but in an hour flight, you can be kind of back to stability. But my second year university, I was headhunted by Tom Ford. I think the other strategy that I went in when I moved to London was that I didn't know how long I was going to be there for. So I was in a 3-year course. I studied fashion management, specializing in luxury goods marketing. And my mindset was that I'm doing this degree, probably going to have to go back to, probably going to end up in New York. Let me take advantage of being here. I wanted to be a sponge. And so when you're a student and you're a sponge, that means interning. Yeah. I loved art. So I interned at Sotheby's, Blaine Fine Art. I worked at Prada on Sloane Street for extra money on the weekends.
Amazing.
I was doing everything to, I worked at Burberry. I was doing everything to just get in there. So, working at Burberry head office after school with my flatmate was the best experience, because I started to understand what it was like for buyers. I would model even a little bit for in an in-house model. I was doing everything. So even though it was extra money, being in that environment of what all these roles were, a wholesale buyer, an actual buyer from Neiman's I would meet.
Amazing.
I would see the CEO, I'd see the designer. And so for me, it was just really absorbing everything.
But you as well, just your way, your personality, your character. I'm sure everyone was so excited to speak to you, because I have no doubt you asked the perfect questions. You were there attentive, probably staying for so many hours when other people would leave, So...
But I genuinely wanted to learn. I wanted to be there, because for me, it was so exciting.
Yeah.
And I think, growing up, I think when people say fashion industry, I'm sure you understand as well, they just think it's design, but there's a huge supply chain that works. It's a domino effect, right?
Yeah.
From pattern cutters, fabrics, logistics, buyers, merchandise. there's a huge, to make that item go on the shop floor, it touches so many hands and so much process. But being headhunted by Tom Ford in second year was honestly an incredible opportunity. I couldn't leave school.
Yeah.
So I started interning in the press office at Gucci. And then when I finished my school, I handed in my dissertation on a Thursday, and I was working in his office on Monday morning.
That's amazing.
And
wait. This is really major.
It is major, yeah.
This is super major. And I know for a fact that until today, you still work with the brand. Yeah. Even if it's consulting, advisory, whatever, that longevity of relationship building is something that you do so incredibly well, and with so much effortless grace, to be able to keep contact with a house or with a person or with an incredible designer, while you yourself have grown up. It takes a lot of dignity and kind of connection with the self. We don't talk about these things.
I always think that if you are true to yourself and you work hard, people recognize that. Yeah. And it pays off when you do it with honesty and authenticity, right? So when and I say this, like, as much as I loved going to university, I learned more from working with Tom Ford than I did anywhere else, right?
I bet.
Because I learned people skills, I learned management skills, I learned design, I learned PR, marketing. I mean, the guy's a genius.
He's a genius.
So fast forward when I ended up moving to Dubai, when I did get that call of, we're opening our stores, we want you to kind of handle the PR and marketing, and I'm coming over and I'm flying over, and it was all of that. There was already this trust because he's like, you know how I work, you know what my standards are. There wasn't a manual. Like, I just knew, I understood him. I feel like I went to the school of Tom Ford.
Yeah.
And indirectly, a lot of the brands that I work with have either designers have worked with him or, have been under his patronage, or people kind of understand that you work at a certain level. And so that's been, I've been super grateful to him to recognize something in me.
Totally. He knows what he's seeing, right? But from there, okay, this was an incredible opportunity that you've had, and I'm sure you've had lots of opportunities, but I kind of feel like you've made them happen. It's not the sense that it was maybe a little right place, right time, but we're talking about things that have taken you across the globe.
Yeah,
we're talking about maintaining connections that have come back to your life in Dubai. You didn't know you were going to be in Dubai.
Yeah.
Right? So there is this kind of awareness that comes with the Rosemin package that I think is just getting more and more enigmatic as you kind of elegantly traverse through the decades. You know what I mean? It's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And you have really become the kind of personification of the essence of luxury. And okay, that's an easy little couple of words to put together, but the layers of what that has taken, it's incredible. Let's dissect what that actually looks like. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got the training aspect, the education, the hands-on. But then there's all the other stuff that you can't really, like your personal style, for instance.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your personal style. How do you make this fabulous, you always look amazing. You're always wearing the perfect dress for the perfect moment for that. Like, how do you do that? How do you make that happen?
Honestly, I always say this, is that you have to know who you are and what you stand for. And anytime I divert from that, or I take advice from someone to change or something else, one, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I don't know how to hide that. So I truly, and even when I started my business, Meredith, and we had this conversation like 16 years ago in my living room, it was like, let's do a SWOT analysis. It's like the first thing you learn in marketing, right? Yep. It's like, what are your strengths? What are you good at? Now, here's your business model. This is you. How do you tie everything together? And what I realized right from the get-go was like, I'm not good at X, Y, and Z. Like, these are my weaknesses. Do I see an opportunity for a business? Yeah, I was lucky to be in Dubai. I wasn't planning on being here. A business happened very organically.
Yeah.
So I recognized an opportunity. I made that decision to move here. But these are my strengths. And how do I tie everything together? And that's when you start putting a great team together.
Yes.
And through that, because I never thought I would have my own business, I had to learn, how to delegate, how to become a better leader, where to invest my resources. And I made so many mistakes along the way, because I was doing it on my own.
It's okay,
And for one person, you just can't be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I made a lot of mistakes along the way when I was setting up the business. But at the end of the day, having that, literally the SWOT analysis of myself, I started realizing that this is who I am.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a part of Team Rosemin? Come on board. Like, I'm very happy. Like, let's be successful together. And that's how I am as well. Like, I want my success to be my team's success. It's never a solo show.
That's beautiful. But you didn't answer my question at all. That's okay. Because I think you've taken it even into another place. Like,
but even for my style, like when I describe my style, like, you're talking about style, like I think I am, feminine with a twist of trend. I tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side, but that's what makes me feel comfortable. Like, and so I always try and stay true to that.
It's just you being you.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think what it is as well is there's this such a deep understanding. Like, if you're going to a Cartier event, for instance, you really understand the DNA of what the brand is and what they're trying to communicate, and you just kind of put yourself into that moment as a part of the brand communication in a really beautiful way. Like, I think there is a real deep, there's so much deep psychology. Like, we could write a thesis on you. I'm not kidding. On how you have built yourself as a part of the fashion industry, but also built yourself as a brand of your own.
Mm.
Like, it's really interesting. And I know that this is a work in progress. I know you're nowhere near complete. Like, there's no way. We're not going to say you made it yet. No way.
No, the goalpost always moves. Always moves. Yeah.
But there is something really, there is a special sauce in the Rosemin brand, the Rosemin person, the Rosemin kind of, aura, the whole lot of it. There is something that I think you do, which is, like you said, the connection with yourself and knowing who you are and what you're all about. I think you do incredibly well being out in the public and sometimes navigating, not really knowing where you're going, but doing it with this incredible kind of public face. I mean, we all have those moments of not knowing where we're going, right? And you now, I feel like you know exactly where you're going. But over the years, we've all kind of been out there on show, and you more than everyone else, and you've just kind of moved your way through things with so much elegance. It's absolutely beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
Okay, that's me being a total fangirl. I love you. But there has to be something in that connection with the self. I think this is something that you have to work on. I don't think it just comes out of nowhere. Like, can you shed any light on the things that you do to maintain that connection with yourself?
So I'm always working on myself.
Yeah.
And, whether that's through podcasts or spending time with myself. So for me, like alone time is really, really important. And when I need to disconnect, I actually have these, like, my friends make fun of me. It's like I almost have this 3-day rule. Like, even if it's like a 5-day wedding, like I can only do 3 days. Like, I want to be present. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy that moment. But like, time to me is very, very important and precious.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the ultimate luxury. And so even if you open my phone and you see my calendar, my day is completely planned.
Yep.
And of course, things can move around and stuff, but really I'm very conscious of my time. And so whether it's time for myself, and that could be anything. It could be like literally just getting a blow dryer, manicure, like that 30 minutes to myself or an hour to myself is really important. I need to just be able to disconnect. And you start understand. I think the older you get, you start knowing yourself, right?
Yeah.
You start knowing and understanding yourself. And also, like, when I'm getting ready in the morning, like, I always think I either have, if I have 30 minutes to get ready, if it's doing my makeup or whatever, it's like I either have music blasting to get me in that zone and getting me pumped up, or I have a podcast going for 30 minutes, because I'm like, your mind is like a sponge.
Yes.
And so it either has to have great music to get me in that zone where it's like high pumped energy if I'm going on stage or something, or if I'm just going to the office or something, I might just need to listen to a podcast and kind of take in some knowledge.
That's beautiful.
But my bathroom is never quiet. Basically, there's always something going on. Like, I have a speaker and there's always something happening.
And do you do anything like consciously to block out negative forces, negative chatter? I mean, you're surrounded by a lot of people constantly.
So I think the trick to that is just saying no. Yeah. And I think when I was younger, I was trying to be everywhere and trying to make everyone happy. And now I always tell my friends, even like sometimes I'm like, they'll do a ladies' lunch and they're having fun. And I'm always like, listen, guys, I'm working, but like, I want to be with you. I'll just catch you guys for a coffee if I can. And, my real friends will really understand. They're like, Rosemin, we'd rather have you for half an hour and, have a coffee and laughs and then you go back to work.
Yeah.
And when you have people like that in your life who just appreciate you, it doesn't have to be a 4-hour lunch. It can be just come and join. We just want to be with you. I love that. And those are the people I want around me that are super supportive, that if I'm hosting an event, will come if I make that phone call and be like, yeah, we want to be there for you. Or if they're just hanging out, they're like, come for coffee, or, like, just come hang out as much as you can. So you need to have good people around you.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about this recent India trip.
Oh, it was amazing.
I mean, wow. I mean, we don't want to talk too much about it, but like, I'd love to know how it felt for you to be there amongst that. It's quite an
First of all,
important
I
moment.
was so proud to be Indian.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it's such an incredible country. And, I think there's a lot of focus on South Asians right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really celebrating, craftsmanship and artisans. And even when I used to work at Gucci, like all the embroidery was done there. So we would have people going back and forth,
Yeah.
like most brands, like Valentino and Temperley, like all these brands would go do their embroidery and come back. And it's really a moment where they're really celebrating that country.
And
acknowledging it as
Right?
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was such a nice week to be there. It started with the Dior show, which was stunning. Followed by the Nita Mukesh Ambani Cultural Center. And this is like
amazing.
and this is a family that have built, honestly, a state-of-the-art cultural center for the country, for visitors. Like the musical they had on opening night was The History of India, beautifully executed. They had the Budapest Philharmonic Orchestra. Like everything was done at such a high level. A beautiful fashion exhibition, followed by a book launch by Rizzoli.
Wow.
And it was really taking the person through the journey of Indian craftsmanship and how international brands like a Chanel or a Valentino or Dior have incorporated their beading and their technique into their design. So it was such a great exhibition. And the last day was the book launch, but it was so well organized. And and I was just really proud to be there. I was really,
That's amazing.
And even for me, like putting the outfits together, I really wanted to wear something very traditional. So I wore Manish Malhotra the first night with a traditional lehenga. And then the next night I wore Anamika Khanna, which was just like a twist of modern silhouette, but still has that traditional Indian technique.
That's amazing.
It was such a beautiful week.
Did you have any moments of just like, wow, something is happening, something is shifting?
Honestly, I was really just proud to be there. When you think about all the people in the world to get an invitation to represent the Middle East, I was so proud to be there. And I was, I even, sent them a message just saying thank you for including me, because there are millions of people in the world, and to be recognized for your contribution in the Middle East and to be, Indian by heritage it was such an honor to be there and witness that.
Well, you've certainly been around. You've been at some of the most incredible events in the world, and rightfully so, because you're someone who can actually relay that to your audience in a very intelligent, inspiring, but also educational way. And I think this is what, you've been able to do so well, even through an Instagram reel. You're able to translate things very, very well in a beautiful way. But there has to be like something that is kind of the end goal for all of this. We talk about making it happen. You've made so many things happen already. I think you're on your 10th life. I think you're like, you're like you've done so many steps up and kind of shed anything that was holding you back, and just moved up so gracefully and kept your head up and just kind of transcended so beautifully. What's going to be the big thing you're going to make happen this year? What's on your mind?
I don't know about this year, but I definitely, what's on my desk is a lot of business plans. I think I'm at a stage where I've been in the industry for over, I think, 24 years, 25 years. And I feel like I'm in a very unique position because I have worked for head offices and designers directly.
You've been in the room, babe.
I've been in the room. I've seen the magic happen.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I, opened the first multi-brand showroom in the region. So that was kind of making headways. So I've done something entrepreneurial. I've worked on the PR side. So working in a head office, working directly with designers, working in the PR and marketing side of it, then getting on TV with Dubai One. I had a show for 5 seasons, which was a really great platform for me to learn, because I had 15 minutes of free airtime, which I would talk about beauty and fashion and luxury and events.
Amazing.
And then from there, I got a role through Harper's Bazaar, and I was like the longest running contributing editor for 13 years. And I literally just left them during COVID. And so I've seen editors and publishers go through, but I was the only constant there.
Yes.
And I think,
So
and
true.
I think that kind of tells you something as well, that I'm delivering, whether it's consultancy or advisory or creating models like The Best Dressed or House of Bazaar, whatever it is that there's a consistency there and there's a messaging. And
but it's not only that. It's the fact that, there are so many things that I know that you do that are not part of your public face.
Yeah, and a lot of the business advisory you do, I can't talk about it.
You can't talk about it, but I know you've been with some incredible people.
Yeah.
You've been the person they've relied on. You've been the person on their speed dial where they're like, hey, what do you think about XYZ? In some moments, you've been the person who was deciding something really important.
Yeah.
Like, would a retailer come into the Middle East? Where would they open their door? How would they do it? What would that launch look like? So these things are like, this is incredible. I mean, I'm a little goosebumpy right now because there is something huge coming out of all of this. And
I'm really proud to say that, like, everything we've done in the business that's under the company RR&Co has always been through word of mouth. It's never been sitting in a room pitching, because I think when you work hard and you deliver and there's a sense of discretion, people come back to you. And brands come back. So sometimes they might leave and, steer left or right. But in the end, they make that phone call back to you because they know that you are consistent and solid. And at the end of the day, you represent the brand. And I think that is so important as well, is to have someone who speaks the language of the brand. And so, I feel like I've been in a very, very unique position. Where I go now, I mean, I've been really lucky that a lot of brands have used me for inspiration, whether it's a shoe that's named, Christian Louboutin named a shoe after me, and Marcia Leffen did a dress, and there's like a few bags and clothes that are out there. And I think, Rosemin is now synonymous with luxury and I love
definitely good taste.
Good taste, I hope so, and lifestyle. And I hope, maybe something, I'm just kind of seeing what's out there, but I think it is kind of taking me to the next stage.
You know what I feel? I feel like you're getting pushed to your next step, because we want more. You're definitely not done. Like there is something huge coming for you.
Can I tell you, Meredith, when I reference the Parliament, example in the beginning, because I actually had to sit there, and it's such a great exercise. I mean, everyone should do this, where you literally sit there from the moment you're born to where you are now. The world and God works. It's incredible how it works, because you start seeing the puzzle come together.
Yeah.
And so even being thrown on TV when I got this 15 minutes, and my brother's he's an actor and a screenwriter. I remember he came to Dubai and he came to the studio and he ended up fixing all the lighting. And he's like, Rosemin, I'm going to teach you how to, read from a teleprompter. And it was like, I learned everything essentially from him about how to be on TV and speak and go on stage. And, but because I had that opportunity, and for 5 seasons, through that, it led me through having this show called Bizarre Beauty. Through that, I had On the Couch series with Indigo Living, which was like female entrepreneurship. And everything kind of just led me to where I am today. And so I always tell people that you kind of just have to jump in, say yes to opportunity. If it works, great. And you have to trust your gut. Like when I feel that I'm done, I'm like, great, I learned my lesson, or I had a great experience, whatever it may be. You acknowledge it, you thank the universe, and you move on. But the world has a crazy way of coming together in a full 360. And whether that's through relationships or job opportunities or experiences, you got to just, embrace it.
You're so positive and beautiful, honestly. But I think, how do you cope in those moments where, you feel like kind of things are falling down, or things are just not going the right direction? I mean, this is something we've also talked a lot about, because the idea of making it happen kind of implies that it's just a
straight road.
A straight road forward. Yeah, right?
It's definitely not.
So like, how have you coped with that? Has there been like a moment where you really thought, oh my God, I don't know, everything is not happening how I thought it was going to happen? Like, I think it's really lovely also to talk about those.
It's, it's funny. Like, I just talked about the example of my apartment, right? Like my flat. It's like, I put so much time into designing it and, redoing it and all this stuff. And I had it for 7 years. And I don't know if it's a 7-year itch, but I remember when like I got notice on it, I fought to be there. And it's just an example of like, I fought to not have change. And in the end, something pushed me out. And it was like things just started falling apart. And the building manager goes, Rosemin, this building's like 15 years old. Like it's actually everyone needs a refurb. And it was like kind of that moment where I'm like, oh God, I have to accept it. And something better came along. Like the home I'm living now is so much better. I wake up in the morning and there's daylight and all these things that I never knew I could feel, and I'm
Isn't that
sleeping well.
amazing?
And so it's just one example of many that, I personally don't like change. I know a lot of people might not either, or they do, but for me, like, change is very hard. And at the end of the day, something will always push you,
Yeah.
into that path. So yeah.
It's really funny. In my relationship with Ayad, we work together and we're married. And Ayad hates change and I love change. I could literally move a house every week. Like, I love it. I'm like, oh, it's exciting, amazing. But he is just like you. He's like, no, let's just stay. So we have a very interesting dynamic. I think it's like a push and pull. We call it a yin and a yang.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think most people don't like change.
Yeah.
And you're right. Life will teach you those lessons. I think on the flip side of it, liking too much change is also not healthy.
Yeah.
Being too impulsive and wanting things too quickly and things to move too much, it also is disruptive. But what do you think in terms of making it happen, the embracing of change? Is it a really important part of making things happen in general?
I've learned that you have to, you do have to embrace it.
Yeah.
I don't think you should force yourself as well. I think everyone has their own pace. Everyone works differently. They accept change. You have to almost mourn if it's like a breakup of a relationship or whatever. You have to go through that mourning period.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different healing process. So I think that's the first point. But honestly, I've been in my flat for like the past 3 nights and I have been sleeping so well. I wake up to the sunlight. Like, I didn't even think I could have that peace. And maybe a lot of that has to do with like decluttering, like, because I had to move, I decluttered. My environment is so important. So really, I don't know if it comes with age. I feel like this podcast is about being in your 40s. I don't know. For me, I just feel like I'm like shedding, like, and being this new person. So
it is a little bit, to be honest. Like, I sit with people and they start telling me all this stuff and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Like, but the thing that seems to be resonating throughout all these conversations is this kind of connection with the self.
Yeah.
And part of making it happen does seem to be connecting really deeply with yourself. And I think there's a power in us that I'm starting to discover more and more, that maybe we knew it was there, but now this conversation is happening, that the manifestation of your ultimate reality, dream, life, whatever you want to call it, starts inside. And I think it's, maybe a little kooky statement or whatever, but it is something which is resonating out of these conversations, and it's actually starting to put me on this new direction of what I actually am doing here, and it's really interesting. But I mean, do you feel that this is something?
I feel like there's a shift in energy, but I also feel that the older I've gotten, I start knowing what I like and I don't like, and I'm starting to understand myself more.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to say no or yes, or embrace things. Or if I'm not comfortable, I can actually just, if I don't feel like the energy is good in the room, I don't have to stay. Like, no one's making me stay, before I would like. But I think all of that comes with experience. I really do.
I like it.
Yeah.
Do you have a mentor, and do you mentor?
I do mentor whether it's students or I speak at schools. When the opportunities come, I sit on a lot of kind of committees, whether it's Project Accelerate or Abu Dhabi Dream Ball. I sit on the committee for Aga Khan Arts and Culture.
You do a lot.
Yeah, patron for the Aga Khan Museum in Canada. So I do things that I really am passionate about. And that's the other thing, right? It's like, you can put your name on 100 charities, but it doesn't mean, like, for me, everything I put my name on or that I give my time to are, whether it's breast cancer awareness or, the Aga Khan Museum or Project Accelerate right now, which is a big focus of mine.
Amazing.
They are projects and they're committees that I genuinely want to give back to. They're genuinely, I want to, I want them to accelerate and grow and contribute to. So again, it's always about being what you're true to. You can put your name on 1,000 charities or give your money to 1,000 charities, but are you being impactful?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that is just kind of pulling it all in and saying, where do I want to put my time and my energy and my resources? And again, I say this all the time. Everyone has the same amount of time.
Yeah.
You have 24 hours. I have 24 hours,
Yeah.
right? Our days are built
So
completely.
does Beyonce.
Yeah. So does Beyonce, right? And so does Beyonce have a team of like 30 people or whatever that she travels with? Yes, because for her, she's like, I'm going to do what I'm best at. And that is being on stage. For her, like doing her own makeup, that's 30 minutes of wasting her time. But I'm sure she has the best makeup artist, right?
No doubt.
Right. The best hairstyle. So while they're doing her hair and makeup, she's probably like sitting with her daughter or whatever it is. Like everyone uses their own time.
Yeah.
Like you're juggling this business. You're a mom. You're a wife. You're doing this podcast right now, right? Everyone has to use their time the best way they can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny because we say these things, it seems so obvious, but I do think there's this personal growth piece that comes in manifesting anything. Is there something that if I tell you like you made it happen, what is the first thing that comes? Like, what is the thing in your life that comes to your mind?
To make it that I made
like,
it happen?
Yeah, that you made happen.
You know, I used to say it was starting the business, starting RR&Co, because I never thought I would do that. But then the flip side of that, right? The flip side of that story, because when in the beginning, when that company kind of just mushroomed and, you know, we're getting a lot of attention for it, I do these interviews and I was like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Like this just happened. But then when I reflected on my life, look at who my former bosses were. Tom Ford, creative director, vice president of Gucci Group. So all the brands are under him. He is essentially an entrepreneur because he's the one. There's no precedent to any decisions he's making. He's managing every aspect of the business, from the design to the PR, the marketing. So I'm around an entrepreneur for 5 years. Then, moving to Milan with the design team, working with the creative director back then, who's a women's wear designer. Again, another entrepreneurial environment, right? And then going to Juicy Couture and working with Pam and Gila, like opening their first office in London in the Middle East. They hired 3 of us, like myself to rebrand, the GM, and we had an office manager. Like, again, an entrepreneurial environment. Like, and that's what it was. Like, literally, they sent us a budget and they're like, make it happen. Build the brand in Europe and Middle East. And those were literally the words. So when I look back at my parents being entrepreneurs and when I started my career, everyone I've been around have been the CEOs or the creative directors or the designers. I've always been around entrepreneurs. So as much as I might have been working at a company in a very safe environment, I've always been directly with the head of the company, who is really an entrepreneur, is like building the business and making those decisions. And so it's
taking the responsibility. Which is the thing that nobody wants to talk about, right?
When you do own your business, you are taking responsibility of the lives, making sure everyone's comfortable, motivating them, being a great leader, teaching them, making them, propelling them into the next stage of the career. Yeah. When I closed the PR side of the business, one, it was a very hard decision to make, right? Yeah. Like the company structures had changed in the Middle East. And again, it was a time where I was pushed to be like, what do I want to do next? So I kept the kind of advisory side of the business, the event side of the business, but I closed the PR side. And when I had to have that conversation with my team to let them go, I wanted to make sure they were all with great companies. So one actually started her own, one went to Michael Kors, another one started her own linens business, another one started her own food business. Like everyone had taken their skill sets from what they'd learned at RR&Co. And, a few went entrepreneurial, another one went into like the fashion industry. And clients, I made sure I found them the right PR partners here. And so it's really recognizing the people who are in your team and how to let them grow and blossom and fly.
Yes, it's so true. Wow. You're so right, the way you've nailed it. You need to you need to transcend to CEO of your own mega luxury group. And let's manifest that.
Let's manifest that. But my point is like I never realized until you look back that everyone I was around were entrepreneurs. So I don't know how to work in a 9-to-5 environment. Like I'm the most creative at night. Like I have a notepad at my nightstand, because for me, I'm always solving problems at night, or I can figure things out at night. Like it's just the way my brain works.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How do you cope with like disappointment?
Disappointment's hard. Not very good at this. I mean, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I think that's a tough one. I'm figuring it out as well because I feel like I'm a proper Pisces. I'm so emotional.
Oh,
and so,
baby.
yeah. And then slowly you got to trust the universe. I think if you're doing things, and I think that was one of the other lessons I learned, when you do things authentically, right? Even if they fail and you knew you put like 100% in, and if it fails, it's okay because that means you're like steering in a right direction.
Yes. I would really agree with that one. I think as well, when you're someone who's kind of a go-getter with an entrepreneurial mindset, you do have the tendency to put yourself out and try things and, be a little bit more like, I would say, like that go-getter mentality. But yeah, it doesn't always work out how you think. So yeah, you take it as a lesson.
Take it as a lesson. And I think as long as you know that you've done everything you could within your power, to try and make an effort. And if then it doesn't happen, then you know it wasn't meant for you.
Yeah.
But if you're walking to like the school bus and like the bus is leaving at 8 and you're leaving at like 7:58 and then you're walking there, yeah, like that's kind of your fault, right? But if you like wake up in the morning, like you have enough time to walk to the school bus and you make it at 8:00 and something happens, I don't know, like the traffic lights go green and the school bus leaves, you've done everything in your capacity to, whether it was running there or waking up on time to make it happen, you tried 100%. Honestly. And then what happens is like the nicer car comes and picks you up. Your parents pick you up and you're like, oh, that's much better. But
I think trusting the universe is, I think it's
you
really,
have to put the effort in, right? You have to put the work in. You have to put the effort in. And you need to be prepared. So you always have to be working on yourself, whether it's through education or just self-improvement. Like no one's going to do that for you. You have to be constantly evolving. The world's evolving. People are evolving. You need to evolve. And you need to take responsibility for yourself to do that.
Yeah, and nobody can be you either.
No one can be you.
As much as they try. Yeah. There's plenty of people trying to be Rosemin, that's for sure. But yeah, nobody can actually be you or walk in your shoes or understand what, that life, which is amazing. It's something that you can always know is yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to ask you this because so many people look at you. I mean, is there anything, obviously nobody can be you, nobody can do you. But is there like a little rule book or a motto or like 3 pearls of wisdom or whatever that you could attribute to getting things off the ground, making things happen, manifesting your perfect life, whatever you want to call it, this idea of the special sauce?
The special sauce, yeah. So my first piece of advice is, for me, I literally wrote down Rosemin. So I'm like, this is who I am. I'm synonymous with this name. And who is that person? So I started writing so I put my name on this, A4 paper, and I started just kind of putting these like lines around it. So what is it? Whether it's my personality, how do I describe myself, the things I like. I just started building what that brand Rosemin is. The personal brand, by the way, not the brand, but like the personal brand of Rosemin. And once you start writing that down physically, your brain connects with what you're writing. And then you start defining who Rosemin is as a person, right? So I, make my money of being Rosemin. So my knowledge, my experience, all of that is Rosemin. So when I started writing that down, I started getting clarity. And once that happens, and I'm lucky enough to kind of have a lot of like brand ambassador collaborations with brands, and sometimes brands will come to me, and honestly, the money might be tempting, and I'm like, oh, that's so nice, but I stop and pause, and I'm like, no, that's not true to who I am, and my followers are not going to believe me. I'm not going to believe me. It's not authentic to who I am. And so I literally say no. And sometimes, as painful as that is, because the amount is great, I'm like, that's not what I want to do. It's not what I want to represent, and it's not who I am. And once you start being authentic to you, I promise you that is what has kept me in the business for so long. And so as so many clients had come, to be a part of RR&Co, and it just wasn't, I was like, nope, it's not right. For me, all the brands have to complement each other. That's very important to me. Has to be a brand that I resonate with and I understand and I want to watch them grow. So once you start being true to yourself, things start coming together. And for the brands that you might say no to, something bigger or better will come along sooner or later, right? Because you're staying true to yourself. So I think that's the first tip I always say. The second tip is you need to read. You need to be knowledgeable about your market. So whether you're working in fashion or the beauty industry, start understanding it because everything is connected.
Yeah.
So the economy is connected to the pricing, logistics. You need to start understanding how that industry works.
Yes. Very good advice, people.
Yes. And so
Yes.
if you are working in the mining industry, start reading the mining trade press, but you need to understand that everything is connected.
Yeah.
And so for me, reading is really important. So even if it's just scanning, Women's Wear Daily in the morning or just the general newspaper to see what's happening in your city or your environment or globally, it's really important to know that. So that's my second piece of advice. And my third piece of advice is stick to your gut. The gut is like, it knows.
Yeah.
And be present. So for me, if I can't be somewhere for, and India is actually a perfect example, right? It was a full week of events. I make sure I couldn't take off the full week, but what I did was I was like, these are the days I'm there. These are the days I'm 100% present. I made sure my assistant here knew how to handle everything, just sent me WhatsApps if she needed to get a hold of me. But for me, I had the most incredible time in India, whether it was going to the Chanakya School of Art and Design and meeting the students, or going to Institute Marangoni and meeting the fashion students, or being with the creative director of Dior. Like I had these incredible experiences and I couldn't be there for the entire week. But what I was there for those 4 or 5 days and I was so, so present. And those experiences, I remember. The people I meet, I remember. That is, to me, the secret of my success.
Oh, yeah. You're amazing, babe. Okay, so we're definitely not finished. We're definitely going to keep talking to you and following you. We love you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for being with us
No,
today.
thank you for sharing stories and
been
honest
really
and honest stories. I've been watching your feed and I think everyone has ups and downs and failures and mistakes, and I think all of us just have to learn from them. And it's just such a nice platform to share. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And let's see what happens at the end. So what we're planning to do is carry this all the way through the year and then start to see where we can connect the dots on what it really takes to make it happen. So watch this space.
Yes. Oh, I know. For sure.